Okay, guys, you probably tuning in right now. I am sending this off. You should be seeing a GAI screen. So let me know if you've got any questions in the comments section of this, but this is going live to Artist Awake. You guys are seeing this first, and then we are going to share this out from here. But I wanted to make sure that you had a really cool introduction to something that caught my eye a little while ago, and looks like it's really amazing and focused and specialized on environment artists. But I know character artists, especially guys who are working in toys, have architectural facades and things like that that come into play quite frequently. All right, so let's get ourselves over. And I want to introduce you guys over into Maxx Burman. So, Max, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, tell me a little bit about your background, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I'm a map painter and a concept artist, as well as an art director for film and games. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. And I guess some of my credits are Iron Man, Godzilla, Game of Thrones, Westworld, and yeah, a bunch of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my world. That's the world that I come from.
Awesome. And why don't we take a second and define, like, what is matte painting?
Yeah. So the way I always think of matte painting is creating a world or an environment, and it's usually used to establish the setting for a story.
All right. And is it background, foreground, or concept? Because I know these worlds are kind of blurring a bit, right?
They are blurring. A lot of the times the matte painter will do the concept, but concept is really to get the idea out, whereas matte painting is the final execution, where the painting that we do goes into the final game or movie or cinematic or whatever it may be. So, the way I explain it to a lot of people is, when you see those behind the scenes breakdowns of, big Marvel movies, and you see all the actors running around on a green screen, well, when they pull that green screen out, we do the painting that they stick behind there.
Got it. So what's the career trajectory for this? Because I've worked with, let's say, for example, Dylan Cole. He taught a class at one of my places, and he started as a matte painter. But you saw, he kind of kept growing in his career. Now he's an art director, and not art director, he's actually production designer, like right underneath some producers. So James Cameron, then, producers, and then him. So what is matte painting? How do people, move up and down? What does that career look like?
Well, it's funny you say that, because James Cameron was also a matte painter.
Oh, no way. That I did not know.
Yeah. And David Fincher worked in the matte department at ILM. So the career trajectory of matte painting, it really can go anywhere, because really, like, the specific skill set of a matte painter is how to tell an entire story within a single painting. And so there's a lot of storytelling elements to that, as well as creating this final painting, this final look for a world, often can translate into designing the initial looks. And so you can go from matte painting to concept art, or to more art director roles, where you're really setting the look and the lighting and the palette of a project. So there's a lot of trajectories. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a path of matte painting, because it's very much its own specialty. So it's not like if you start out as a roto artist and become a compositor, eventually a visual effects supervisor. There's not that pathway for it. Matte painting is its own little island.
Yeah.
But those skills can translate into a lot of different things. So it's not abnormal for matte painters to go and kind of flex their other muscles.
Huh, that's awesome to hear. All right, cool. So why don't we jump in and start looking at what this is that you've created. So you have kitbash3d.com, right?
That's correct, yeah. So one of the things with matte painting is it's a lot of painting, but more and more now we're being forced to rely on 3D.
What's the advantage of 3D? Why don't we start there?
Sure. Well, one of the big advantages of 3D is, first of all, your perspective, you get it for free, right? You don't have to worry about if your perspective's correct or not, as opposed to if you were hand painting.
Sure.
as well as you get a lot more accurate lighting because you're actually setting this up in three-dimensional space.
Yeah.
So when you put a light somewhere, you can see how the shadows are actually going to cast.
Right.
But on top of that, and taking it a little further, when you're designing a shot more on the concept side, or when you're planning a matte painting, by having an environment in 3D, it allows you to play with many different camera angles. And a lot of the times you'll find an angle that you wouldn't have thought of if you were just drawing or painting. So that's the big advantage I see is it really helps. It really helps you find more dynamic shots.
Ah, that I understand. Yeah, I saw that in Ken Fairclough's class where he does these really simple block-ins, and then he actually goes and explores the shot itself.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what I used to do all the time. And then what I started using some kits online, there's a bunch of other 3D kits, or most of them are robotic pieces though. Mm-hmm. But I would play with those and I realized that besides finding cool angles, the serendipity that comes from using a model that has a bunch of details built in. Yeah. You maybe find something in your foreground or your midground or a focal point in the image that you would never have thought of. And that kind of serendipity creates this creative momentum that gets you more and more excited as you go down the path of building a world. Got it.
All right. So let's look at this and look at specifically what's involved here.
Sure. So, basically the idea came from using a bunch of kits and they were all robotic parts. And I started thinking like, this is awesome, but as a matte painter or a concept artist who does, for me, primarily environments, what I need is architecture. Mm-hmm. And so, after waiting for someone else to build this, finally, I just got impatient enough and was like, what, I'll put this together. Yeah. And bring on the modelers to build out the pieces that I need. So, basically the idea of Kitbash 3D is, can we create a ton of different sets that revolve around an architectural style, which these styles are pretty generic around anywhere. When you're doing a character, you probably want something a little more unique and specific to that character. But when you're designing a world, architecture styles don't change.
That's true. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Art Deco's Art Deco. You can use it in many different ways. Like Blade Runner uses Art Deco to create sci-fi, but Art Deco's Art Deco. So we started building out these kits and pretty much trying to find the fastest way so that you can build out your whole 3D environment super fast and get right into painting. And not have to spend that much time detailing out your shot, and also give you that ability to find those little hidden gems and moments in your scene.
Got it. All right, and I think you have them in 3D. We can take a look at them inside of. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. So this is what a kit looks like. This is again the Art Deco kit, and we have it split up into we have the bigger pieces, the bigger chunks. Big buildings, but we also bring in a ton of smaller details that you can kind of mix and match to build your own structures.
Right.
And on top of that, we try to find ways where we can allow people to be as creative as possible. Mm-hmm. So if I just take like one of these buildings, inside of this building, it actually has a ton of different parts to it so that you can split this out and mix and match it to create, I think that almost like Legos for concept artists or matte painters or visual effects artists or designers. It really is like a Lego set.
Very cool.
All right. This is Gothic really quick, just to show this off. If you need to build a castle or something, we're giving you all the different parts and pieces that you might need to be able to create a castle.
Got it. And do you have a scene or something where we can see kind of how you assemble these things? Because I can tell from this, it looks like, you've got parts with the idea being assembly.
Yeah, I can open one of those up for you. It's going to take a little bit to open, so while it's open, if you want to keep talking.
Okay. All right. So you started this out of your own kind of desire, to fix it. So how long have you been? How long has this been a part of your workflow?
Yeah, I would say probably 2 years ago is when I realized that I've always used a little bit of 3D, but about 2 years ago is when I started to get more hardcore into it, realizing that that's kind of where this industry was moving for the traditional painters.
Got it. And then how long have you been using these actual kits? And really where I'm going with this is, like, what have you seen as the value? Has it decreased the amount of time that you spend on a project? Has it increased the variety of things that you can do? Like, where are the specific benefits now that you have been experimenting with your own, you scratched your own itch? How's that going?
Yeah, I did. First of all, it's amazing. Like, I have so much more fun creating because now I have all the pieces that I've been wanting.
Yeah.
But it has definitely sped up my workflow, and it's allowed me to create shots that are a lot more dynamic and not as limited to the camera angles that I can come up with on a pencil and paper.
Right.
But the greatest thing about it has been when we release these to the community and seeing other people get inspired and create things with these kits that I could have never imagined. And that's really where the gem has been.
That's great.
Yeah, I think just yesterday I saw there's a special edition Blade Runner poster that came out that Ridley had, I think it's Ash Thorpe and Maji Kuchiyara make, and they used one of our kits to build the poster.
No way. Which we have to find that because I saw his Twitter post on that.
Yeah, so that's using the Art Deco kit. So things like that are and there's a lot of those that keep popping up. And we've only been out for 6 weeks, but as we, just immediately after launch, seeing our kits kind of trickle into all these projects around us, that it's super cool.
Yeah, and are you building a community for this now? Where do people post and connect with you?
Yeah, we host a competition. So on our site, you can get like a free sample kit, and we have different sample kit contests. So on Instagram, you can hashtag KB3D contest, and that's how you just enter into the contest. And once a month, we choose a winner and give them a free kit of their choice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sparked this flame in this community that is just rapidly growing of people who are like, oh, I want to create something so unique and different with this kit and really get creative with it and enter this contest and kind of show it off amongst my peers.
All right. And so that's Instagram, and then you just check a hashtag.
KB3D contest.
KB3D contest. I see it right now.
Yeah. Here, I'll pull it up here too. It's a pretty cool thing to see all the awesome work going on. Yeah, so you can see just a ton of people. These are all using our kits. And people have gotten really creative with it too.
I had no idea your co-founder was so handsome.
He is a handsome man, not gonna lie.
All right, great. This is really wonderful to see.
Here, and I'll pull up. This is just an example of like a scene I built with the Art Deco kit. Putting together a ton of different. This is for the cover art. And you can see I just grabbed like a bunch of buildings and kind of slammed them together to create this kind of one massive building. And this is like one of my favorite parts is once I've kind of assembled this basic layout that I like, then I just have fun trying to find the cool camera angles. What could be a cool foreground, midground, and what could be a dynamic angle that would be something that maybe I wouldn't think of if I was just sketching.
Oh yeah. I like that angle.
Yeah. And there's so many little details in these things that putting the camera anywhere kind of gives you something new that maybe you didn't think of.
So what is the process? Once you've got something like this, you got a grayscale. How much of it do you do Keyshot? Do you just paint directly over it in Photoshop? Do you render it in Maya or Max? What software are we using here? Maya.
Yeah, so I'm using Maya right now, and I'll take this model, I'll throw it into Keyshot, and I'll open that up and show you what that looks like. Okay. I'll set up just a really basic lighting, and all these models are UV'd and set up for tileable textures. So I'll usually just wrap it with like a brick, just a tileable brick texture.
Okay.
And because basically I know I'm going to be painting on top of it, and I don't want to spend too much time in 3D. Like the whole point of this for me is to get out of 3D as fast as possible. So like this scene was probably an hour and a half to build with the kits. And then maybe I'll spend another hour in Keyshot, and after 2.5 hours, I'm in Photoshop painting.
Do you find that you get more than one? Oh crap, that went right in.
Yeah. Yeah, so here, this is really where I'll play with my camera angles, because at the same time, I can drop a light in here or an HDR and kind of spin this around and get different shadows that might, cast somewhere.
Yeah.
And then not only playing with the camera angle, but you're also playing with how the light direction is going to hit it.
Man. And so how much of this is HDRI, and then are you putting any other special lights in there, or are you just using the map and rotating it and whatnot?
Yeah, I'm just using the HDRI in here.
That's great.
Yeah, really, I'm trying to find the least technical 3D approach that I can stay as artistic and dynamic with it.
Got it. Because you could always add special highlights and focus of lights and spotlights later on, right?
Completely. Yeah, and the texture detail too. Like I can photo bash on top of this just to add a little bit of breakout to really get those textures working nicely.
All right. So once you've got an angle, you've got a view here. I imagine you've got some issues, like you probably have to separate out the sky and things like that. So how do you export this, or how do you get this ready to get painted?
Sure. So, for the image, I'll open up the PSD so I can kind of walk through it. But, the angle was something like this. And, the sky in general on Keyshot, you can automatically has an alpha. So you can separate that sky pretty quick. But then what I'll do is I'll render a couple passes by throwing just different materials on here. So, maybe I want a reflection pass or an ambient occlusion pass, just a couple things. So if I want to pull the shadows more or bring up the highlights or that specular, I can have a little bit of control of that in Photoshop. Yeah, so I'll render that, and then Photoshop document's pretty big because I'm working at pretty giant sizes. But
what sizes do you work at?
8K.
8K, got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the big things with map painting is because we're doing such detailed final shots that are going on the screen.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we're doing one painting that has to work for an entire scene with tons of different cameras in it.
Totally.
The paintings we make are pretty giant.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then what kind of computer do you have that runs this and processes all this?
Yeah, I'm using a Windows with an i7 and a couple of GTX 1080 graphics cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much RAM do you have?
128 gigs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Playing
and it's still, I am, but it's still, I'm still keep pushing the limit of what this thing can handle.
Oh, wow.
It's funny, Ryan, I don't know if you've experienced this, I'm positive you have, but every time that you get a big computer upgrade and it's awesome for like a year, and then all the new software comes out and all the demands of clients get so much higher, and then it's right back to where you were before.
Yep. Yeah, it's endless. It's endless. Or your iPhone just somehow or another can't handle the apps like mine is, or my Mac, which is I think only 2 years old, but now it's just slowed way down. It's just whatever it is consuming it too much. So these things all have a life cycle.
They do, and it's getting shorter and shorter, which is pretty frustrating, but at the same time, it's pretty amazing what we can do now.
Yeah, 128 gigs. I remember when in the early days of ZBrush, I remember people just trying to get 4 gigs, and then there was that limit of Windows only actually used 4 gigs, so people would get 8 gigs, and that was a great thing. A long time ago. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, one of the things I love Keyshot for, which is just mind-blowing to me, is that it can handle 1 billion polygons. That I didn't know. That's a lot.
Yeah, I've pushed it all the way to its limit, and and it's insane. You know, you can put anything into there and it'll render.
All right. So talk to me about this. And do you work in layers a lot, or do you just paint directly on?
No, I'm very much a layers person. Yeah, I try to stay super organized with everything, and yeah, to be able to, you know, I always think that the more organized you are, the faster you actually are, because it's easy to go and change something. You don't have to sift through thousands of layers, or if you're working on like 5 layers, you don't have to mask out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. And would you say that that's kind of one of the differences between concept and matte? Because in matte painting, you're probably doing a lot more of like adjustments and design changes, whereas a concept, they're trying to just whip it out.
Yeah, definitely. You know, with a matte painting, you might have a week or two, or sometimes even, you know, if it's a big matte painting, you could have 2 months to do a painting. So it's really in your best interest to keep it organized and clean, because you know, you don't want to pile up a bunch of mistakes and months down the road be working with a really messy file.
Got it. Great. So how do you start to think about adjusting an image? Do you think about, let's say, atmosphere first? Do you go in and adjust light first? Do you need to see, let's say, color variation, tonal variation? Do you need to see textures? Because I've found that people have different inroads into the creative process. Like Melissa Altabello, who is in the Environment Artist Bootcamp, she was one of the mentors, and she'll create a basic scene and then throw textures on it to start to get a feel for it. How do you approach this?
Yeah, you know, textures are really my first step. I'll kind of walk you through my thought process here.
Great.
This is the base render that I got out of here, and just a couple of the other passes, just ambient occlusion and global illumination and just a lighting reflection, and a little clown pass so that I can separate out the different materials.
Great.
And so, yeah, the first thing that I'll do is I'll come in here and let's just grab one of these layers. I'll zoom in here. So the first thing I'll do is get a mix for this 3D working with these different passes, and what this is about is really just trying to get the form in the best way. So adding a little like of those context shadows with that ambient occlusion, getting a little more like definition in that lighting, and popping that reflection a little bit. So not much work, but just like, what can I do? I just want to make sure that the form is in there first.
Let me see that one more time if you don't mind.
Sure. So we'll go from beauty.
Okay.
Get that AO in there to add a little context shadow.
Yeah, totally, huh?
Global illumination, just to pop that lighting a little more, get a little contrast, and just a little reflection to bring up those golds.
Got it. All right. So.
And then. Yeah. From there, I'll really go in and start adding photo textures.
Okay.
And so that's really just taking brick images and putting them into perspective and kind of just laying them on top.
And is it just like flat lay on top in a multiply mode or overlay or something like that?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll end up doing, let's say...
there's a lot of layers.
It is, yeah, this file is pretty complicated. So, you know, first I'll have kind of this concrete texture that I'll lay on top flat.
Okay.
And then kind of get these bricks in there just to break up the bricks a little bit. So
yep,
it's not, yep. And then I'll color correct this to get it within the same world. And then I'll start to add my passes, my 3D passes right on top. So a little soft light of that beauty layer. And then again, bringing in those contact shadows, bringing in that global illumination. So I'm using those render passes on top of those textures. To pull that up.
And are your 3D models set up so that it's easy to kind of say, like that clown pass? I can't remember what it looked like, but does that separate out, say, this concrete column versus this, you know, brick facade versus this window?
So it's pretty easy to set up it's called a normal facing pass.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever direction those facades are facing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do that and do a little cleanup pass and then paint some of my own mats.
Okay.
So like this is kind of where I ended with that, where I kind of used that normal pass and kind of cleaned it up a bit just to separate out these different pieces so that I can have control of the textures on each of them.
Okay, so that normal pass, does it actually create separate groups based on like an offset? So there's a normal going one direction and then the normal changes and then the normal goes back. Like, for example, the window is the same normal as some parts of the facade.
Exactly. So that's where I have to go in and clean things up a bit.
Okay, got it. But it's easier because you got that in between group.
Exactly.
I understand that. Okay.
Yeah. So from there, once I get the textures in and I'm feeling happy with those, and I'll kind of just flip the textures on and off so you can just see that again.
Yeah.
So that's really where I start. Like, let's get the CG pass kind of working well. Let's add those textures to give a little bit of that detail and break up to it. And then once the textures are on everything, that's when I start to play with adding additional lighting. So just popping little things here and there and getting that atmosphere in there.
Okay, I got that.
And I'll do that for each building and kind of layer it up in that way.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and it's amazing how much that 3D model brings to it. Because, I mean, you couldn't sell it on that alone. Those textures definitely add that spice. But that 3D model, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, you know, it's not that far off from it. You know, all it is like, let's take this. This gives me the great composition and gives me a base for the lighting and some passes to work with. But then it's just about, you know, filling in the blanks here.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some of, like, those are some awesome pros. Let's talk about some of the cons. Like, what do you think are some of the things that people need to be aware of? Like, for example, in the ZBrush land, which is my special land, I always tell people to be careful of using the base mesh and not changing the silhouette, right? Like, everybody who uses a demo soldier or something like that, they'll know, okay, so the nose, that's the demo soldier nose, you didn't change it. What are some of the things that people need to be mindful of using this to make sure that their work, you know, stands out?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. That was my biggest fear when we released these kits, was that all of a sudden every Art Deco scene was going to look the same.
Yeah. And
I think that if you just render out one of these buildings and you just put a camera in here without changing it, that's the danger. As opposed to actually using these pieces and trying to get creative with how you put these pieces together. And like combining pieces, like that kind of thing, you kind of need to do that to create more structures. Like, these are just the Lego bricks. You don't want to just use the Lego bricks. You want to take those Lego bricks and build something with them.
Yes, yes, great. So that's great. I can see that. Now, what would you start stacking on top of that? And are they designed to stack?
Yeah, they definitely are. They're all the same scale of windows and stuff like that, because that's another big thing that I see a lot of people make the mistake of, is if you get one piece and you stack it onto another and you scale it, well, that doesn't quite work, because your windows, your scale of the whole thing is going to be off and look funky.
Totally.
So the scale is something important to keep in mind. And also, you know, find ways to edit this and make it unique. Like, maybe you only use the topper of something and maybe you stack that a couple times next to each other. Like, it's really about how creative you can get, because like, you and I both know the tools don't do, you know, the tools are just tools. They're not there to substitute creativity. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I can totally see this now. You know, you don't have to use the whole building, use a part of it. Put these together with some kind of pattern. And then I saw there were some, in the front row, you've got all of these smaller pieces.
Yeah, yeah. And
how did those fit into
make things really fun?
Yeah.
So let's say you have like a camera angle and you're doing this, say you're doing this building right here, right?
Yeah.
And you want to add a focal point or just something to spice it up. So this is what these pieces are for. It's like, okay, now that we're getting really close into here, maybe I want to do something or add a little filigree or something to just kind of spice these little areas up.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And that kind of allows you to do that really quickly. Just grab some details in there. That's what that's really all about. So, and this is where, like, this is for me where I have the most fun is trying to be creative about the little things, those little details that maybe just catch a glimmer of light. If you put a gold shader on here, maybe they just catch a little highlight and they break up this structure and create something, you know, unique with it.
And do you find people work within the same kit, or is there some sense to combining the kits, even though they're different architectural styles?
Oh yeah, one of my favorite paintings that was using the kits was from Emmanuel Shu, who's just an amazing concept artist, and he did this piece, and it uses all of the kits, all our 4 launch kits. So Tokyo, Deco, Gothic, and Arabic. He used every kit possible. And you can see he got super creative. He took these like little pieces that you get, like the ones that you were talking about over here. He took these little pieces and turned them sideways with a little filigree and made these like big holes out of them. You know, things like that. You can see kind of that, you know, he had these pillars that he built up with a bunch of these smaller pieces, built this big pedestal, and then grab these filigree pieces right on top to make it, you know, give it that extra detail to it. But yeah, you know, mixing Art Deco with Tokyo is super cool. You know, a building here is on its side, which I think is cool. You know, there's a lot of creativity in here. And I think mixing the kits is where you can get some really unique results.
That's pretty awesome. All right, so anything else that you want to show people or share about this process, about the tool?
You know, I feel like, I hope that I kind of gave people like a little taste of it so they can see the potential, but really the big thing is I'm constantly discovering new ways to use these kits by what everyone else is doing and how they're surprising me. So, you know, that's the biggest thing I'm most excited about, and what I'd love to see is I like seeing what people are going to do with these that are different than what I'd ever think of.
Got it. That's great. All right. So how do people find first the kit bash, and then we'll go back to you. So how do people find the models?
Sure. So kitbash3d.com. That will take you here. We have new kits coming out every month, new styles. And
what's the average price of a kit?
They're $199.
Okay. And then how many models does that include?
You know, they vary, and we really judge it by poly count, because you know, something like a Gothic castle might have more models, but they're smaller pieces, or, you know, like different things like that. So we try to judge it by poly count, and it's about 2 million polys per kit.
Okay, got it.
And they're, I mean, 2 million polys, but also they're pretty lightweight.
And these have UVs in them, and those are, do they have UVs?
Yeah, they're all UV'd, and they're set up for tileable textures. And we spent a lot of time going back and forth to find like a mid poly count that you could, you know, if you duplicated this, you know, 100 times to bash together this big structure, we wanted the models to be lightweight enough that it wouldn't crash your computer if you're doing it like that.
Yeah. Are you beveling edges, or is it kind of, yeah, let's look, there we go. Pretty straightforward there. Okay, good.
Yeah, we're not beveling, but we set everything up in quads so that it's super easy to bevel an edge. So if this is in the foreground and you need to do a quick bevel, you know, you can do that without much problem.
Got it.
And of course, now is when Maya's crashed on me, because I have 6 copies of Maya open and keys shut.
I love it. I love it. A presentation is not complete without Maya giving its opinion about things.
Yeah, Maya loves when people are watching.
Yeah.
But yeah,
all right, my friend. Well, this is really cool. So Kitbash 3D. Now, how do they find, or actually try a sample kit? Good. That's great. So
you can grab
people
a sample kit. Just send your email and we'll email it to you.
Okay, and then there's the Instagram hashtag. That's great. So how do they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram at Maxx Burman VFX.
Okay.
You can find me there and keep up with kind of everything that I'm doing. But you can also check out my website at maxburman.com.
Okay, great. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for one, coming here and spending time with the students here at Artist Awake, and then also for the work that you're doing. You know, I know you're scratching your own itch, but I mean, I've known matte painters and concept guys long enough. This is a big deal. So,
thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you so much for letting me talk to everyone and be a part of your collective and your audience.
Thank you. Yeah, and really cool. Also, I should say that showing us the process from Keyshot to Photoshop, and that, you know, really neat. So again, great having you here, and everybody who's listening, make sure you check out kitbash3d.com and you find Maxx Burman, like him, follow him on Instagram, and stay tuned for more of these in Artist Awake if you're a student, and have a fantastic, we're heading on to a weekend soon, so have a fantastic weekend. All right, thanks,
awesome.
Max.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, ciao.